with that experience if you don't know yet. It's even better if you don't know anything about what we've been up to. It makes it much more fun for all of us. We not only are making a documentary about what happened there, so the documentarians are Clayton and Kim, who are here. We're still making this documentary and including in the documentary us traveling around the country talking to people about what we saw along the border. So you're not only here to watch little pieces of the documentary, you get to be a part of it in some way. And maybe tonight will show up in that documentary as well. So we're really excited that you're here, and we're ready to show you some of the pieces of what we've all been up to. I just also will mention that we are going to be live streaming all of this. So we're going to start the live stream here in just a minute. So if there's somebody in your world that you're thinking, boy, I wish so-and-so was here, it would have been nice for them to have seen it, they can go to votecommongood.com. It'll be streaming right there, or our Facebook page, it's on there, or on YouTube. It's even on Twitch. We stream it all over the place. So if there's somebody that you're thinking of over the course of tonight, you want to send them a little message to watch now, or they'll have a chance to watch it later. So all of this will show up in a live stream for them. We want you to know. And all that you're going to see that's on this screen, video-wise, will be available after Monday to be sharing widely as we tell people about the documentary, because we've been on a tour for this that started a week ago today in Pittsburgh, and we went to Pittsburgh and to Columbus and to Grand Rapids and to Holland and to South Bend, and we're here, and then tomorrow we go to Minneapolis. So our little team has been touring around. It's been a long week, but we've been touring around with different speakers at every one of them. You're going to have a special set of them tonight, so we're really excited about this. So everything you see, you'll have a chance to share what's literally happening in the room tonight and also what's happening beyond that. So we're good? All right, so here we go.
Well, I'd like to introduce you now to our preacher today, Doug Padgett. Doug is a national speaker, he's a writer, he's a pastor, he's got a wide imagination that you're going to have the opportunity to hear about today.
We are going to do this ride that Julio mentioned, where we're going to ride across the country to St. Augustine, Florida. We're going to do that along and as near to bear witness to the experience of people. It's going to take us 67 days to do this.
To take the stories that we learn along the border and to tell them over time with people around the United States.
And they have nowhere to go.
Especially in places that we think the political opinion about the border could really have impact on who we are.
To talk to religious voters. And we really believe many evangelical voters really do want to find a new option.
Is to make this desert so deadly that if anyone crosses here, they're going to suffer in the desert.
We're 400 feet to a water tank and 800 feet.
That are created, they didn't just exist. Someone made them. You can feel free to applaud if you want to, because we've only had... What got you into this? Why would you decide to ride bicycles across the country? One of the first things that I like to remind people of is we didn't do it because I'm a biker. In fact, I didn't even have a bike I could ride across the country at the time. I had to go buy a bike to do this. I had to feel, I wanted to see things that you can see on a bike. I wanted to go a little faster than walking, but not as insulated as driving. I wanted to get close. That is a question that then we can answer with, and here's why, because we thought this was interesting to talk about the issues on the border. So it gave us just one more window, important to know. A bunch of ordinary people went along. Not superstars or anything, literally had a rock star. One of those guys in there was a rock star, literally had tea. Some people rode for 3 days, some people for a week, some people came once and then came back later another time because it took us 66 days to travel across the country, so there are plenty of invitations. So we were right on it, touching it, seeing it, experiencing it, and the sense that you feel imprisoned in your own country. We spent time with Border Patrol. Our first day, we talked to Border Patrol and wanted to hear their perspective. We saw Border Patrol apprehending people right here tonight. We traveled in an RV and tents. Tim Gilman, who's right back there with that hat on, he drove that RV. We had to have an RV along so we had someplace to make something more usual happen, which would be something better. And so thank you, Tim, for driving us all along. We traveled in that they wanted to, and we pulled on a bike and they could just ride with us. I say all of that because I want you to know that all this tonight is not us just talking about along on this ride with us, some way or the other. Maybe we're going to actually go physically ride again, but we want you to feel like you're being invited into the things that go on in that trailer, to share the story. Do a little bit of trivia tonight. So you have on your chairs there a white card, just a white piece of paper. Your brain, you're going to see why you're going to want that here in a little bit, because things get a little bit heavy when you start to see the reality of the lived experience, and sometimes you need to click out of it and use that other part of your brain. Up in the air and you wave it around, and it becomes a real communal kind of thing, so we invite you to do that. All right, what percentage of Americans say that immigrants strengthen our country? 48%, 66%, or 82%? Right, your Mother Mary, whatever you want to do. All right, and the answer is what percentage of Americans say that immigrants strengthen our country? 66%. How many people got it right? Anybody right 82%? We're all pretty sure it's not 82%, right? But it's not 24. It's not 24%, so that's some good news, right? Still some good news.
This is what makes me mad. This area has been characterized and discussed as an absolute war zone, to the point that I thought coming here we were going to see some real militarization and need for border response. This family's having picnics under a Coca-Cola banner.
You say Mexico border, everybody automatically thinks the worst. Yes. You use Mexico, everybody thinks the whole country's cartel. It's a stereotype that everybody in Mexico is crook.
Yes.
And that's all they think. So they're just like amazed when someone go down there and realize that there's normal areas and communities and they'll call for the boat ride. Are we going to get shot at? I said, well, if we did, I wouldn't be out there. Yeah, I'm taking you out there to get shot. It's a real tour, man.
We've ridden the border. We started in Tijuana and rode all the way here on our bicycles, so we've been stopping these towns. And people just over and over keep saying, I wish people in the rest of the country knew what it's really like here. And there's all this slander about what's going on.
Well, of course, because depending on who you're going to listen on the news, they're going to push their agenda or how it's not the old days where you just reported the news and let people decide what they want to decide. And those days are long gone. We laugh all the time, like when they say something. A firecracker go off over there and it's a shootout, shooting to the U.S. This is what you get reported. So it's just kind of comical when you hear some of the reporting that goes on.
Come in and see what church is, and because when you start saying, we're talking about immigration and church, but the fundraising weekend around the crisis.
I don't think those people would be staying there if they were getting shot at every day, would they?
Yeah, things at the border are not always the way that we've been told that they are, and that's part of the story that we want to tell. we asked everyone a question. What do you know by living on the border that you wish people in the rest of the country knew? That was a foundational question for us, and you're going to see that over the course of the documentary. All right, another trivia question for you. What percent of Americans then say that immigrants are invading our country and replacing our cultural and ethnic background? Is that number 15%, 31%, 42, 57? I haven't told you what kind of reward you get if you get all these answers right, but it's significant. Let me just promise you that. It is significant. So is it 15% that say that immigrants are invading our country and replacing our culture? 31, 42, 57. And the answer is 31%. Well, look, it's not 57, so there's some good news, but it's not as low as it needs to be. And when you look into those numbers, you begin to realize that groups who agree with that statement are most always white evangelical Protestants. That number is 59%. That hits home close to me. That's the religious community that I come from. Those are people we want to talk to. In fact, the people in that bar, that junkyard bar, we went around and talked to a bunch of those people. Everyone I spoke to, which was a lot of them, they're Trump supporters. And they also are against the wall. Because when you live and get close, the politics start to open up a little bit. So there's people who are movable on some issues that they might not be movable on other issues if you get them close and you get them talking. Republicans, 57%. People that are older than 65 tend to be even higher than the norm, 41%. So there's some particular people we can work with. That's part of the reason we're putting a documentary together. How many of you have watched a documentary in the last 2 months or so? You documentary film watchers? And how many of you have watched a documentary, have told somebody else about the documentary that you watched? And then how many of you are not, realize they're not as excited about the documentary as you are because you watched it? Well, that always happens. But the reason we want to make a documentary is we know that people will watch it. And they'll tell people about it. And they will start to engage. And there's some places and some people that we can really impact with some different kinds of messaging. And starting with people, seeing people like that on the screen saying it's not like that, starts to soften the heart and open up their understanding a bit. Now you're going to start to hear from some other people. 2 women that we met along the ride that work and live along the border are here with us. You're going to hear from Dora in a minute, and she's in what you're going to see is the work she's doing in Sasabe, Mexico, which is just south of Tucson, right on the border, right across from Sasabe, Arizona, which if you're like me, you've never heard of Sasabe, Arizona or Sasabe, Mexico. It's a small little place, and you're going to meet Dora Rodriguez here in a minute, and this is the work that Dora does.
Solo métalo un ratito en el agua, ¿ok? Que Dios le bendiga, hijo. Por lo menos vino aquí para que nosotros le demos una manita, oye. Gracias. Lo siento mucho, de verdad.
6 días en el desierto.
Qué horrible, hijo, por Dios, qué horrible.
3 días estuve en la línea esperando a entrar. Y ahí la comida se estaba terminando, por eso se me agotó todo. Suero, Gatorade.
Lo
ya
siento.
el agua ya no.
Que vamos a dejar que se seque un poquito, ¿ok? Ay, perdón.
No, es que mis rodillas.
So he's hurting because he was with friends, but his 3 friends were able to walk with no problem. But he got his feet horrible. And I'll show you why, because the shoes that the smugglers give these people are horrible. This is how cheap they are. And every single pair of shoes that they get from the smugglers causes those blisters. So part of his story is very tragic, and it's very common that they get hurt and the group leave them behind. because they want to go. They're going to do their journey. But the person who stay behind is when they risk their life to die. And this is what high school kids are doing. All the way in
Providence, Rhode Island.
yes, beautiful. So I mean, I'm so thankful. And they write these beautiful notes and they put $20 for them so they can have some money for their journey. ¿Usted la leyó, la notita que le hizo la niña? ¿La leyó? La notita. Una niñita de 14 años escribió eso.
Querido amigo, hola, nombre es Katy. Soy estudiante en los Estados Unidos y tengo 14 años. Entiendo que tu vida.
Lo siento mucho. Muy linda. Que tu vida vale mucho, ¿verdad? Y la vida después puede incluir desafíos y luchas, dice. Encuentra salud y felicidad y éxito. Espero que tu viaje sea seguro por ayudar e incluido una donación para que en cualquiera de tus necesidades te deseo suerte. Con amor, Katy. Una niña de 14 años. Okay? This is beautiful. This is what these kids did. It's beautiful. Usted entró aquí por Sázabe, ¿verdad? ¿O entró por altar?
Por altar. Todos son muertos.
Todos. Todos, todos. Todo lo que usted ve rojo son todos los muertos que hemos encontrado desde el año entre 1999 hasta ahora. Hemos encontrado 3.862 muertos en estos desiertos. ¿Sí?
Ok, gracias.
Dios me lo bendiga, hermano.
Usted igual.
Guatemala.
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 Él es mi hijo.
This video always gets us. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Dora Rodriguez. Thank you for being in here. Sarah? Before I start sharing a little bit with each of you what really is happening in our borders so far away from here, I'm getting a little homesick. We've been out and about for almost 10 days now. And I would like to ask you to join me for a moment of silence, reflection, a prayer for each of our brothers and sisters and children that have died trying to seek safety in our country. And also for the ones that are trying to cross at this moment, and also for the ones in detention. And please, let's not forget our brothers and sisters that are being displaced and killed in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you so much. So many people ask me why I do what I do and why I am in those border areas every single day if I can. And like I said in many times in my stories, that each of us in our life had a moment that was tragic, a moment that has changed our route, changed our path. And that happened for me when I was 19 years old. I left El Salvador when I was 19 due to a civil war. Now all you guess how old I am. I know that. Time went fast, I tell you. I was 19 and the Civil War started right after I graduated from high school. So it was very dangerous for me to stay in my country. I had my mother, my sister, my two brothers, my dreams, my house, my culture, my food, my friends, and I left. I left with a backpack in my back because I couldn't stay in a country where I was a target for the cartel, for the death squad in our country, who killed 75,000 people in a 12-year war and maybe more. I was very active always in church. I always liked to be a leader and organizer, and I participated a lot in different activities in my country, in my town, and it was a love poverty, in my area. And so we were led by nuns from the United States, from the Mary Knoll congregation, which they were murdered after. And some of them, and I knew that because I was in some form, attached to this group, I was in more dangers. So my mother said, you gotta go. You gotta find safety. And, it's a long story, and I don't wanna just focus in my story tonight because this is not about Dora. This is about what are we going to do as a country to better our policies and to help our brothers and sisters waiting the borders to cross in a good way. So, but when I crossed in 1980, it was July in the hot summer. The weather, the temperature reached 117 in that year. And we were not told that it was hot and that we were going to walk and that we could have get lost. The organized crime was bad at that time and it's horrible now. They're more sophisticated, they charge a lot of money, and they're killing people. So they did. We got lost. It was 26 of us, 3 kids, 3 beautiful girls that were reunited with their mother in California. And they're the ones that marked my life forever because they were my sisters of that journey. And I was 19, so they trusted me that I was going to protect them. They were 12, 14, and 16. And I saw them die around me, and I couldn't do anything for them. And I also saw a woman who was pregnant die next to me. By the time we were rescued, 14 have died and 13 survived. So when I said life take you to places that you don't even imagine you will be, I never imagined I was going to be standing in front of a group of people and talking and bringing my story to create awareness, to help to understand people who has the power to write these policies, to humanize these policies. We are people, our families, trying to seek safety in this country. And by this policy, I don't know, does anybody know about Title 42? So Title 42 came up in April of 2020. Not even a month later, we were told that we're in the pandemic. And we were in the pandemic for a while, right? So the last president used a CDC law to contain a pandemic against our migrants, against our asylum seekers. So it has been used to repress, to detain people in our borders immediately and detain. Even though the director of the CDC says that's not what it is for. It is criminal, is against the law. Is silent, is getting people to be silent at the moment of detention. They rob the process. They rob them the dual process, the right to say, I fear for my life. We have women and children coming to our center, Guatemalan young women with her, you know how they wrap their babies around, so beautiful, the women from, the native women from Guatemalan. The 3-month-old baby and her 3-year-old had walked the desert for 12 hours and got detained. Immediately was returned. So the center that you see in the video, it came out of a need. So I always said, this law, Title 42, created something in my heart. I saw a need and we took an action. So this is how we have to do it. Because they were deporting people to that town every single day, 150 people, women, children, men, at any time of day or at night. So we saw the need because in that little small town, it is nothing. It's only 2,500 people in that town, the local people, and there's no hospital, there's no shelter, there is no transportation, public transportation, and it's the hub for the cartels. It's the organized crime property in that town. So we saw the need to bring humanitarian aid in there. And when our governors, when our people in Washington keep saying we have a crisis, they had the wrong place. The crisis is not in the United States or in our border in this side. The crisis is in Mexico because we're sending back our asylum seekers. So the only good thing that I saw about Title 42 is that in the town of Tucson, Arizona, we are so lucky to have a large community of humanitarian people. And we work day after day after day to make sure that we open the door to our brothers and sisters. They're coming to us for safety. So my job now, after I had another chance in life, is to do this. And I can't see myself not doing anything else. It's my healing, it's my heart. I do it to honor each of my brothers and sisters that did not have that opportunity. I think so often of the 3 sisters, how beautiful life they could have if they had children, if they would be, a social worker like I am, and, a good life, but they didn't. But I thank God for the chance. And I thank you for being in here. And please help us to spread the word, vote for laws that make sense and bring some, some real face of what this country is. We can do better than this, and I know we can, because we're a country of freedom, and we're a country of love. I have many volunteers that go with me to Mexico, and they're Americans. And I ask them, why do you come with me? Why do you want to be involved? And they say to me over and over, because I want these people to know that we are good, that we are better than that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that is Dora. Just fantastic. We've all been struck, haven't we, in this last couple of months, seeing how the people of the United States have said, let's open up our country to refugees from Afghanistan. My wife and I are part of an Afghan circle where we're going to help someone come to the United States. And a lot of us are doing that for people from the Ukraine because we see the need, that they need to have a place of safety. And then something in our mind shifts when it's someone from Venezuela or Colombia or Nicaragua, Mexico, Honduras. Something's going on, something in the water that keeps us so generous at one moment as a country and so restrictive at another. It's one of the conversations that we want to have. All right, a little Question for you. Since 2003, with the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security, which, by the way, the reason we mark it there is that Border Patrol, people having borders and people manning our borders, we've been doing that for a very long time. But after September 11th, 2001, Border Patrol was moved into the Department of Homeland Security, which makes it a military force, which, by the way, means that it's not under normal supervision or even constitutional demands for information from them. So they're an extrajudicial branch of the federal government acting in the United States. Really important. So since then, how much money has our federal government spent on agencies that carry out immigration enforcement at the border and along the border? And by the way, there's a 100-mile ban all the way around the country from every border, from every coast, 100 miles in, that Border Patrol has control. And no one can tell them what to do. They override every other agency that's local. So every time you get near an ocean, every time you get near a border with it, are we 100 miles from any border right here, from a coast or from a coastline or anything? I live in Minneapolis, so we're not either. But you know, you get up in the boundary water. Anyway, all right. So how much have we spent on border enforcement? $700 million, $1 billion, $10 billion, $333 billion. How much have we spent on border law enforcement? And you have your answer? And the answer is $333 billion with a B. But if we would just reinforce the border, then we could talk about immigration reform. Boy, we've been hearing that for a long time. For a very long time. At some point, we have to say we can't spend our way into protecting this border. Because frankly, we've been there. It doesn't need it. It is a boondoggle of wasted money. We tried to get hotels a couple of times along the border, especially in Texas, between El Paso and McAllen. Tried to get a hotel room to be able to not sleep in a tent. And we call the Hampton Inn, and the Hampton Inn is $386 a night outside of Del Rio. And we're like, why is the room $368 a night? And they said, oh, we've been sold out for months housing Border Patrol. Move them all in, they're staying in these hotel rooms, and it's just spending after spending after spending. Sometimes you got to look at the money and who's spending the money, who's being rewarded. One of the things we learned on the trip, we had 3 huge lessons. One is the border's not as dangerous as people have been telling us on the U.S. side. It's a fiction. Secondly, the border's incredibly dangerous if you're a migrant, like the ones that you saw. It's dangerous for people that are trying to come into this country. And third, it's small nonprofits like Dora and Alma and other Sister Liko, who you're going to see in a minute on the film. They're the ones who are solving the problems created by all this massive spending from the United States government. And we need to get our government off of the back of our small nonprofits who have to then fix the problems created by policy and by government spending. So there's really a crisis afoot. When we were in Del Rio, we watched the Border Patrol pull up with trucks full of people who were granted asylum. Now, by the way, they're granted asylum from the country of Cuba and Venezuela, but not from Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador. Why do you think we grant asylum to Honduras and Cuba? Because the United States has an interest in overthrowing those governments. So those people are allowed to come in. So it's a capricious plan. So we watch these trucks pull up, Border Patrol, and they walk up to the people who run the Valverde Humanitarian Center. A small nonprofit started all on their own in Del Rio, Texas. You know what I'm talking about, where all the Haitians had gathered up and they were on the horses and all that stuff? That place, they've created a response to all the people that were crossing the border, because Border Patrol says, once they're granted asylum, we don't have anything to do with them. So they're yours. They were just dumping them off at a gas station to get on a Greyhound bus to go wherever. So rather than the city of Del Rio wanting them all at this very gas station in Del Rio, they asked this group to start and form a nonprofit organization, which they did. And when we asked this small nonprofit that has processed 16,000 asylum seekers, how are you funded? They said, well, none of us get paid, and we use an Amazon wish list for people to put together backpacks and send to us. We're watching helicopters and military equipment and a staff of Border Patrol pull up with people who've been granted asylum, and they're all well funded, and then they turn them over to these small nonprofits. All the ones that we met run by women, by the way. The women power saving people on the border is pure. It is remarkable. Some of these people are here tonight. It's incredible. So that's part of what's going on. So these numbers don't translate into the crisis that's being created for people that are impacted by all this. So sorry for the little sermon, but I'm not supposed to go that long. I'm going to get in trouble. All right, here's Sister Lika. Sister Lika is one of these people. She runs this center in Nogales, Arizona, just south of Tucson. Dora would love to have you come visit her. Alma will tell you the same thing. Sister Alika, this place that we are, they would love to have you go there. You fly into Tucson, you drive 40 minutes, you cross the border, you're at this place. So if that stirs any of your interests, I promise you it's a great place. So this is the work that they're doing at Sister Alika.
El centro Casa de la Misericordia y de todas las naciones, lo que nos dedicamos es ayudar a las personas con mayor vulnerabilidad en su vida. En este caso, en este momento es como un albergue, es un refugio para migrantes que están solicitando asilo a los Estados Unidos. La gente que está aquí en su mayoría son mexicanos, muchos vienen de Centroamérica, incluso de Sudamérica, Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, que van llegando hasta llegar a esos Nogales. La gente que está aquí no está porque quiere. Es gente que ha sufrido o su vida corre peligro y no pueden estar en sus lugares de origen y por eso tienen que dejar sus pueblos, sus casas para buscar una serenidad, una paz que no tienen en sus tierras. Esta mariposa representa la migración, the migrants.
Es la monarca, ¿no?
La monarca. Y para nosotros es como símbolo de la migración. Y al fondo voy a poner cometas. Un niño allá de aquel lado. Un niño con kite.
The United States law is that the only way you can seek asylum is on U.S. soil. You can't ask for asylum in the United States, even if you qualified for it, until you get to the United States and get on U.S. soil.
It's not just a border issue, it's a United States issue. And we're trying to ask the question, who's included in the we the people?
So the reason migrants are coming to the border and then turning themselves over to the Border Patrol is to ask for asylum.
We're a group of pastors that are organizing this and traveling the country. We really want faith voters to care about these issues. We know that a lot of faith voters think one way on Sunday when they're at church and then act another way on Tuesday when they walk into the voting booth.
The We the People ride started in San Diego, California, and now these bikers are going to head on over to check out the migrant situation on the other side before they continue along their journey to Jacksonville, Florida.
I keep thinking about all the times that we have crossed into Mexico, how easily we can enter into Mexico, that the Mexican government just welcomes people like us to come in. And yet, in the United States, we put up razor wire and walls and armed guards and U.S. Army to keep people from coming in. That disparity just haunts me every day that we ride along this border.
This doesn't feel as much like a shelter as it does a big family. Can you talk a little bit about how you create a sense of community?
Su situación permanece en un estado de familia. De hecho, nosotros recibimos familias completas, papá, mamá, hijos, mujeres solas con hijos o mujeres solas, que son las más vulnerables o menos espacios tienen dónde llegar. Y crear esta comunidad ha sido como una respuesta a la necesidad, ponernos en los pies del migrante, ponernos en los pies de ellos y crear a través de la experiencia con el trabajo de las personas esta posibilidad de vivir en familia.
The word that keeps coming back to me on this ride is the word slander. And partly because in the Christian narrative, that's such an important word, to not slander people, that you don't speak of people in ways that are untrue and that are slanderous. And yet we slander these people who are trying to come to this country by creating all these narratives. The other story we should be telling is that these are survivors, these are heroes to their own family. These little girls and little boys who look up to their moms and dads who are making their way across other countries to get to safety. Those children are seeing their parents as heroes of their family and heroes of their faith. And we act as if they're the problem.
It's just beautiful. My name's Dan, and it's a real honor to be a part of this group, working with Dora and Alma, and bearing witness to their work and their stories. I got to play music with those kids from that video. It's just a beautiful time seeing their joy and resilience. But they shouldn't have to be resilient, right? Like, they're coming on this extremely long, extremely dangerous journey, making their way thousands of miles by buses and trains and walking. And then they finally get to the promised land. They get to the United States border, this city on a hill that we claim is the greatest place in the world. And they do the legal thing. They present themselves as asylum seekers. And they're turned away and sent back to Mexico, where they know no one, they have no resources, they have no place to stay. I just can't imagine going through that. We call ourselves the greatest nation on earth, and yet we're stingy with our hospitality. We close our doors when we should be opening them. I wrote a song, kind of a love letter to the church. I grew up, going to church every day, and that's why I was so confused and so frustrated and so angry by the silence from the church community, the faith community, when it came to things like immigration. And so that's what this song is about. I grew up in your churches, Sunday morning and evening service, knelt in tears at the foot of the rugged cross. Taught me every life is sacred, feed the hungry and clothe the naked. I learned from you the highest law is love. And I believed you when you said I should trust the words in red to guide my steps through a wicked world. I assumed you'd do the same, so imagine my dismay when I watched you lead the sheep straight to the wolves. You said to love the lost, well, I'm loving you now. You said to speak the truth, well, I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the words that you put in my mouth? May love overcome, justice roll down. They started putting kids in cages, ripping mothers from their babies, and I looked to you to speak on their behalf. Oh, but all I heard was silence, or worse, you justified it, singing glory, hallelujah, raise the flag. So your fear it turned to hatred, but you baptized it with language torn from the pages of the good book. You weaponized religion, and you wonder why I'm leaving to find Jesus on the wrong side of your walls. And you said to love the lost, well, I'm loving you now. You said to speak the truth, so I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the words that you put in my mouth? May love overcome and justice roll down. Come home, come home. You're better than this. You taught me better than this. Come home, come home. You're better than this. I used to think you were better than this. Come home. Come home, oh. Maybe I was too naive, or I just didn't want to see. There's always been a little poison in the well. Churches sit on stolen land, a nation built by stolen hands, and we use the Bible to justify it all. Yeah, from slavery and segregation to mass deportation, this is who we are, but not who we have to be. There's a lot of work to do to pull up the evil by the roots, but repentance has to come for this peace. You said to love the lost, I'm loving you now. You said to speak the truth, that's why I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the words that you put in my mouth? Be love, and justice roll down. Be love, and justice roll down. Be love, and justice roll down. May love overcome and justice roll down. Thank you.
We want to meet the people who are living on both sides of the border.
Y queremos conocer a la gente que vive en los dos lados de la frontera.
And we want to tell the stories of the impact of the policy from the United States.
Los activistas continuarán su viaje a través de la frontera para seguir presionando al gobierno por un cambio en la política migratoria. Las actuales políticas de inmigración de los Estados Unidos están obsoletas y son crueles. En el campamento convivieron con niños y adultos que viven aquí en condiciones inhumanas de hacinamiento y enfermedad.
Maria, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Gracias por hacer esto.
Maria, will you tell us your name and where you're from?
Dinos tu nombre y de dónde eres.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es María. Yo vivo allá en Aldea Timactés, San Matías de Tambo, municipio de... Salí de mi país porque peligro para mí, peligro para mi hijo, y violencias, drogas, violaciones, no hay comidas, secuestradores para mis niños. Mi esposo hace años me dejó, se abandonó, él casó con otra mujer y se abandonó con mis hijos, por eso yo no quiero abandonar mis hijos, yo quiero mantener mis hijos.
¿Cuántos niños tienes?
2.
I have 2 children.
Un varón y una hembra.
One boy and one girl.
How old are they?
¿Cuántos años tienen?
Es mi hijo, trae 11 años.
One is 11.
Mi niña dejó 9 años.
And my girl that is back in Guatemala is 9 years old.
So why is your daughter back in Guatemala?
¿Por qué dejaste a tu niña en Guatemala?
Porque no hay dinero, ya no alcanza mi dinero cuando salí. Por ahora se perdió unos 34,000 quetzales. Porque cuando me trae mis 2 hijos, muchos dineros, sí es difícil. Me quedo triste. Cuando me dejó mi niña allá en Guatemala, estoy triste. Yo quiero luchar por mis niños. Yo no quiero perder mi vida, mis hijos. Allá no hay luz, no hay agua potable, no hay nada. Yo me trabajé día a día. Yo me salí como a las 6 de la mañana. Me llegó hasta las 4 de la tarde. Apenas me gané unos 30 quetzales. No hay dinero, no hay comida. Estoy triste. Ya va 11 años, quedó con mis hijos. Ay, estoy luchando por eso. Yo quiero luchar por mi vida, mis hijos. Yo no quiero.
I wanna keep fighting for the sake of my children.
Yo estoy miedo por aquí. No hay nadie me ayuda, pero gracias.
No, para servirte.
Sí.
When nobody was helping us, nobody looked at us. We are very thankful God sent us because everybody ignores us.
This is your son?
¿Es tu hijo?
Sí, es mi hijo.
Maria Pascual, thank you for sharing with us.
Gracias por ayudarnos.
Gracias. Thank you for helping us.
Te agradezco.
Claro, con mi corazón.
Yo abrazaba a mi niño, rápido salgan allí porque ya varias gentes vamos a cruzar, digo. Y luego salí, bajó del cima de esos, iba corriendo con mi niño porque son peligros también, ahí llegan los más feos también.
Nosotros solo, ellos dicen pues para los coyotes, dicen que cuando nos traen, dicen que nos dan comida, nos dan un autobús para llevarse, pero no era así.
To God of all breath, we ask for love and care and kindness and goodness to these sweet mothers, sons that we've met today. Changed policy for the United States, safety in that plaza, and to put it in the words of Jesus, may your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because this is not that. So we will say an amen, but it is a paused and broken amen, because this work is unfinished. Amen.
Hi guys, how are you? My name is Alma Ruth, and please know that we love you already without knowing you. Dora and I are allergic to cold weather, and we brought our 5 sweaters, and I got my little thing here, and I still have like 2 jackets over there, and I see you guys just with a sweater, and to think that you guys live here willingly, that you want to be here, God bless you, so we are very, very excited to be here. We are very happy to be here. And the reason why we're here is because it doesn't matter how much Dora and I work day and night to save people's lives, to save women and children and families' lives. It takes politicians like the young man that was speaking to change policies. And it takes your American vote to change policies, because the policies and the laws and the foreign policy that get made in Washington, D.C., those people have never been on the borderlands. And they're dictating in a national way how we should live. And they've never been at the border. They're giving their opinions, and something that I'm learning from Doug. He doesn't know, but he is my mentor. He doesn't know, but I adopted him like one of my favorite people, and because he is inclusive, and that we, the people, and that really kept just ringing in my brain. Who do we include in we, the people, right? And if we say that we are the greatest nation on earth, it is high time that we act like it. And I am a recent immigrant. I'm from northern Mexico. As you can tell, English is my second language. I am a senior missionary. I'm a very conservative, Pentecostal, Assemblies of God, brought up missionary serving on the borderlands. But regardless of my upbringing, what I see on the ground on the Mexican side of the border is completely unacceptable. We are saying, okay, for you to request asylum, you have to go to the port of entry. Well, on International Bridge, I know about Texas, I'm not sure about the other states, but there is a checkpoint on the middle of the Rio Grande River. And you have federal officers there asking you for your documentation. And you cannot go past them without showing your documents. If you dare to run through, you'll get shot. And so there's no point, there's no way, there's no access to request asylum for the women and children that you saw. And we started serving right now in the past year. We've been focusing on indigenous Mayan women and their children from Guatemala who are seeking refuge, who are desperate to give the opportunity to live for their children, for life. Not to get a better life and to go to the mall and hang out with their friends. No, to live. They're seeking the opportunity to live. And what I'm finding out is that the conditions of the indigenous peoples in Guatemala are horrific. If you have ever heard about the conditions in South Sudan or in India, these conditions are very similar in Guatemala, where child bride situations, the parents cannot feed them anymore, then they will give them to older men, they get impregnated, and then they leave them for the next one and the next one. So it is completely unacceptable, a civilized society, that we're allowing this to happen. And let me tell you, there's no Costa Ricans requesting asylum on our border. There's no Panamanians requesting asylum on our border. They're always from the Northern Triangle in Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Always the same nations. Why? Because our foreign policy. I served in Cuba. I lived in Cuba. I lived in Havana from 93 to 98. And one of the first questions when I was detained by the Cuban military is because I speak English. Are you CIA? And I'm thinking, if I was, I would get the Navy SEALs right now, and you would not touch me. But, and it's like, no, I'm not, because you speak English, so you're connected to them over there. Yankee imperialism. And you are seasoned enough to know about the Bay of Pigs, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara. You people remember that one, right? Maybe the younger people don't know who I'm talking about, but you guys remember, right? Well, we gave a New Testament to Che Guevara's granddaughter. That was one of the main reasons I was cut. But, so for these people are like, well, you're speak English or you're CIA, right? Well, these three nations, the Northern Triangle, are the ones that are most affected by our foreign policy because of American interest, because of the fruit companies, because of land, because of whatever. So they have experienced major massacres of indigenous people. The same like in El Salvador, when she's mentioning how many thousands of people have been killed in El Salvador, is because of our American interest. And that is, human life is sacred, and all human life is sacred. And it's something that we should, as people of faith, that's why our main reason why we're here is to invite people of faith to say, this is unacceptable, we need to change this, and it's time that we do that. And that's the reason why we're here, and when Dora was saying we're getting homesick, it's like, where's the sun? We brought sunglasses, right? Maybe sunshine is hanging out in Cancun, right? In my country over there. And it's like, where's the sunshine? But we are here because we want to invite you that we cannot do it alone. Dora and I can die serving people, and we will. But we will never end helping people if you guys don't change the situation with your vote. And that is extremely important. And when I'm trying to read, this gentleman sent me this on Love and Mercy. It is about biblical justice and reminding us how God is a God of justice. And that is really helping me to keep my eyes on what really matters. And one of the verses that we embrace as a faith-based nonprofit is, learn to do good, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the widow. Because all these ladies that you saw, you see them smiling and you see them speaking in Spanish and you can almost understand what they're saying. Well, it takes us months. I was working with Maria since August by the time she met Doug and his team in October. It takes us months to get out their stories. It takes us months because it's filled with rapes and death and pain and suffering. They said, well, I left my village. They melt down and we don't know what to do. And I'm not a social worker. I'm not a trauma-informed therapist. But because of my work, I have to learn what to do in those instances. So it has been through love. It has been through patience. It has been through acceptance and said, we are equal. Once a week, I cross the bridge into Reynosa, and we go to an undisclosed, you saw the yellow building that we got in. It's a family restaurant. So we made arrangements with the family that owns the restaurant. And we, even when I'm not present, like right now I'm traveling, I made arrangements with the owners, and they're able to go and sit down, have a meal, charge their phone so they can keep track of each other. They can go to the bathroom on a toilet, and they can wash their hands with soap, and they can have a warm meal. Or we leave the ministry credit card so they can go to the grocery store and buy meals. So we secure their meals, we secure their clothing, we secure medical care, we secure the medication, we secure that they don't forget that they're humans. They don't forget that they have the opportunity to live with dignity. And it is so true what Doug is saying. Most dangerous places on earth, the most difficult, the most non-pleasant, because let me tell you, I will never choose on my own free will to be at the Mexican side of the border. I'm Mexican, I know better than that. Why not choose Cancun when I'm at it, right? But because the need is there. My children and I were supposed to be serving in the Middle East among Syrian refugees. And my two boys have Arabic names because we were preparing for that for a long time. We led teams from Mexico seminary students to serve in Palestine, Turkey, North India, and we led teams into Honduras and Cuba. And that was the last thought on my mind, to be at the Mexican borderlands, because we know it's dangerous. When I told my mom that I was serving among refugees in Reynosa, you're doing what?
So my mom doesn't know half of the stories you guys know. So you are blessed. And so she doesn't even know that I was arrested in Cuba. And so, all of this to say that it is time we do something. It is time. United States is truly a blessed nation with freedom where women are equal, where we can say our opinions, and so many times way too much, right? But all of this we can do better. We are better. These current policies and this current behavior on uncivilized conversation and disrespectful conversations, we should be done with that because it's getting us nowhere. And the world is watching how we treat refugees. The world is watching how we treat asylum seekers. The world is watching to say, you know what, asylum seeker, but you know that a refugee is somebody that is already authorized by the American government. They're already authorized, they can get into the nation, they can have access to work or access to education for their children. They're authorized by the Mexican government. Asylum seekers are below a refugee. They're trying to get to the status of a refugee, but it's impossible to get it done. And so we need your help, we need your prayers, we need your support. Come and see Dora in Arizona in your winters, like in your January. Please go and see her so you can defrost. And then come and see me in McAllen. It's called the Rio Grande Valley. We have 70s, 80s, and 90s. We have communities and neighborhoods that I cannot live in because I don't have the proper age. And they're called winter Texans. They're called winter Texans, right? Like in Florida, but winter Texans. So you can come and see us, and you can see those honky-tonky bars that Doug showed you. And when he told me, he's like, we found a bar near the wall. It's like, where? I live there, and I don't know where it was. So he found so many places that I was not aware of it. I live like a few miles from the place that you saw. And so this is time. This is the perfect time for us in history to change it. It is a perfect time that you and I together change what is happening. And so please join us. Please help us to change this narrative. Help us to make the world different through love and through mercy and compassion. And that we, like we're saying, we together can make the world much better because the United States is much better than that. God bless you.
Thank you, Alma. Hey, I will say that if you are feeling like, I really would love to help Alma or Dora in the work they do, you can make a donation over here. Money's not enough, but it's a great start. So if you want to help them in the work that they're doing, or you want to leave $20 for a migrant or something like that, we can take care of all that stuff. So, or you can just talk to them directly, and they'll be glad to do that with you. A couple of trivia, and then you're going to hear from Vanessa, who came on the ride. And then you're going to hear from Nick, who wasn't on the ride, and that's important. Because it's not just people that happen to go there that care about this, because, none of you went with us. Maybe you went on your own route, but it matters that everyone finds a way to be involved. So here's a trivia question. We hear a lot about how dangerous the border is and how we need to have our homeland security securing our border as an act of homeland security. So the Cato Institute did some study on this. The chance of being murdered in a terror attack committed by an undocumented immigrant in the United States is 1 in what per year? 1 in 2 million chances? 1 in 12.7 million? 1 in 1.6 billion chance? 1 in 10.9 billion chance? What's your guess? Based on statistics of the last 45 years, what is the chance of being murdered in a terror attack by an undocumented immigrant in the United States? Well, the answer is 1 in 10.9 billion. 3 people have been killed in 45 years by undocumented immigrants. Oh, sorry, I should say billion. Thank you for that. Thank you for reading that carefully. 3.9 billion. They're like, hey, I know this is tricky. He says billion there, and then the answer is million. It's 10.9 billion. In other words, that's not what's going on. That's not what's going on. And that's, again, in the policy analysis by the Cato Institute. If that's interesting to you, it's a long PDF. I've read it. It's really quite great. Included in it is this kind of statistic. It's a short list of things more likely to kill you in the United States than a refugee. And all of these are things that are more likely to kill you. Cows, your stairs, the hot tap water, dogs. That one's the only one that makes sense to me. Vending machines falling on you, swings, your very own bed, or the wind. Those are all things that statistically kill more people than refugees do in the United States. So there's some narratives going on that we think require being changed. And this is Vanessa Ryerson. She came along on the ride with us, and you're going to have a great chance to hear from her.
So, my name is Vanessa. It means butterfly. It's easy to remember because they migrate. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and I have since migrated to Northwest Arkansas. In August of 2019, that was, try to remember, before the pandemic, but after Trump, somewhere in that space. August 3rd, that happened to my heart. I had just gotten back in the car with my 4 kids after shopping at Walmart, back to school shopping. Pretty common thing, you know, lots of people doing it all over the world. And when I picked up my phone to get in the car and looked at it, I had a breaking news alert on my phone, and there had been another shooting. And this one was different for me because the details began to come out and the background and the story about what was happening. And we found out that shooter had driven 10 hours across the state of Texas to get to El Paso. And before he left, he took out all of his guns and he used them to make the letters TRUMP and took a photo and loaded that to social media. And then when he got to that Walmart and went inside to terrorize those people, he would walk through the store and he would pass over white people so that he would have more bullets to spend on brown people. That image got stuck in a loop in my brain. And it played over and over and over and over again for about a month. The reason that it was so stuck in my head was that if I had been in that store in, El Paso instead of Arkansas, that shooter would have passed over me and my husband, my 2 older kids and my youngest kid. But that shooter would have shot my daughter, my Latina, my Charlie, my adopted daughter. And I realized that my whiteness could not protect my daughter in my own country because the hate and the vitriol and the fear had become so great. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but then I heard about an opportunity that Doug and Vote Common Good had put together for faith leaders to go to the border. And so I got on a plane and I went, slapped down my money, and I flew to El Paso. I'd never been there before, didn't know what I was going to do. I just needed to go. And when I got there, we did 3 things. We went to the site of the murder, the massacre, and we saw the long football field length of this memorial of the people that were still coming to mourn. And then we held a vigil with those folks. And then we went to see the border wall itself, this ugly, menacing waste of metal. And I could not help but kind of have a split focus of 2 images in my mind, because just a month earlier I took my son to college in New York City, and I went to see the Statue of Liberty because I'd always wanted to see it. Because when my great-grandmother was 16 years old, She came alone across the ocean from Ukraine to start a new life. I'm just curious, I haven't done this before, but how many of y'all, your grandparents or parents, maybe great-grandparents, are immigrants? Yeah. Yeah, it feels right here. So I wanted to see that place, but then I was holding these two images in my mind and they were so disparate. Why do we have Lady Liberty here and we have this ugly wall here? It makes no sense. The other thing that we saw, we attended a in-district congressional hearing. That doesn't happen very often, but we got a chance to do that with their local policymakers. We had famous Congress people come, and we're all part of this big event. And I was able to hear these stories about what it was like for people who live right there in El Paso, and their community is really split in half on one side of the border and the other, and their family. These people are family. Like the border is just in their way. And they told stories about how Border Patrol shot an 8-year-old girl across the Rio Grande River. And like Doug said, they are not under the United States constitutional law. So there will be no justice. There's nothing to be proud of when your country is doing this. And it's very hard to accept that this is what we are doing. So I went back to my room that night, and I am a faith person. I've been in ministry for 25 years. I sat in the darkness, and I just had a little conversation, little arguing match with God. And I said, I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Nobody is going to listen to me. My family in rural Pennsylvania is not going to listen to anything I say about this. They're not going to believe me. What am I going to do? And I heard the Lord's voice. That's not really my tradition. I'm not used to that. But I always know it's God's voice because it's really succinct. The Lord said this: "You haven't said anything yet." So I started talking. I was able to go out and work during the 2020 campaign to try to get some better officials to get elected. I began talking, began working. I also began making, because I am a broken China mosaic artist. I am very used to working with things that are already broken and trying to arrange them in much better ways. And so I had an idea that came to my mind, and I just sat on it for a little while. Well, right around that time, 2022, this performance artist over here thought up this idea to ride these bikes across the country. Now, I am an artist. I'm a mom of 4 kids. I am not an athlete, but like I did in El Paso, I felt I really need to do this. So I went. We'll come back to that. And I went to I went to Texas, and I rode 250 miles in Texas. Yeah. It's very hot. Like, think August around here. Yeah, it's like that. It's very big. It's very dusty. I got very familiar with the sensation of being very weary and wondering when I would be able to lay my head down and rest. And I carry that sensation in my body, and I remember it, and I think about how it must feel for mamas with little babies, for young men, for people that are hungry, to trek and trek and trek. And they have no Tim with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every 10 miles to rescue them. I also met many of those young mothers. I was at the restaurant with Alma Ruth and saw that tent city and ran around that square with those little children following after this Pied Piper on a bike. I saw their joy, their strength, their beauty. And I met these mothers much like me, who were desperate to protect their children and who would do anything. And I don't speak Spanish, but I could hear their heart. went home, and then I came back and I went to Florida, and I rode another 250 miles. Yeah. And I got a chance to ride all the way across and get my feet in the ocean, which I was pretty excited about. And I'll tell you, really, the best part for me of this whole experience was the day after. The day after our celebration, the day after we raised the bikes over our heads, the day after we had a really nice meal in a restaurant by the coast because we were really hungry. That next morning, I got a chance to sit. I met Dora for the first time, got a chance to be with Alma Ruth again, and some of the other women who do work along the border. And it was just 4 women sitting in a hotel, waiting for our shuttle bus to come, just having a casual, open, relaxed conversation. And to me, that moment became so holy. It really was church for me. Because what I heard from them as they were telling their stories is they had done the right things. They had done all the right things. They had tried to marry somebody who would be good to them. They had tried to follow the Lord. They had tried to follow the rules. And every one of them had been disappointed. Every one of them had had the rug ripped out from underneath them. Every one of them had been betrayed. Every one of them had suffered some abuse or injustice, some utter unfairness. And instead of letting that break them and shatter them and leave them broken, they had chosen to go back out into this desert and to serve and to care and to bring love. And I was reminded of a biblical story. I was reminded of a woman in the desert. Once, twice, she finds herself out in this desolate space, this deadly, beautiful space. Once, she's pregnant and as vulnerable as you can be. And the second time, she's there with her child, her heart walking around outside of her body, and they are going to die. And she places that child under a bush and walks away because she cannot bear the thought of watching him die. But the Lord comes to her. Her name is Hagar. Her name in Hebrew means slave. In Islam, it means beautiful nurturer, which I find really lovely. Hagar does something that I don't think anybody else, in the Old Testament at least, does, and I find it really interesting. Hagar names God. Most of the time, God does the naming. But Hagar names God, and she names God the one who sees. You are the one who sees. God is the one who sees injustice. He's the one who sees how these things play out. He sees us now. My job as an artist is to see things. And it is my job to show you what I have seen. Tonight I am showing you something that not very many people have gotten to see yet. This is the dream. This is the vision, the thing that I wanted to make. I do not usually drop plates from a 10-foot ladder in order to make my mosaics. If you notice, in the center, it is the silhouette from a shooting range. And the pieces that fell when I dropped that plate, I left them lay exactly where they were and exactly how they fell. And I mosaiced white around them, much like we do when there is a body that is chalked out on the floor so that we can mark the place that it was. This is 7 panels, like a calendar, 7 days in a week. And it is also a map because it's made out of souvenir plates of the United States. And so you can see Texas and Arkansas, where I'm from, Missouri, Michigan, Indiana, many of the places that we've been on this tour, because we are a broken nation. I think in a group like this, there has been plenty of heartbreak. You have felt shattering, a loss, especially in the last few years, a shattering of your sense of what our country is like and what our families should be like, what our faith should be like. Perhaps you've lost someone to this terrible virus. But the thing that I want to say is that we cannot make beauty out of violence. We think that if we put enough people at the border with guns, if we put up enough surveillance and barbed wire, if we make enough fierce rules that are breaking people, that we will somehow be able to create beauty. And I think you know that that is just not possible. I can't make a beautiful mosaic by dropping plates. They have to be lovingly placed where they can thrive and be beautiful, those pieces. You are part of this mosaic. We are not here tonight to make you feel bad, to shame you. We're not here to break your heart and leave you with no recourse. We want to give you a lot of opportunities for how you might enter in and enter into your own healing. So you need this as much as any of us need this. You need to be healed and whole. And so there are lots of things you can do. Of course you can donate, of course. Of course you can educate yourself. You can, if you're on social media, you can get on and follow Alma Ruth. She will teach you so much in little segments that you can actually take in and learn. You can find those Amazon wish lists and contribute that way. In a group like this, I'm just kind of reading the room. You know what would be really great? It would be really great if you just would take one of your friends out to lunch, because this is a great skill that y'all have. Go out to lunch with somebody who has differing views and tell them about what you learned tonight. You don't have to convince them. Just tell them about why you care. Just form a relationship. Just strengthen a relationship with somebody else. You have no idea how much good that can do. In closing, I just want to say, there is no way to heal a mother's broken heart, not even with $333 billion. Thanks.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for helping us to see, and you're making and encouraging others to go and buy some lunch. My name is Nick Brock, and I'm the Executive Director for Vote Common Good West Michigan. I am from Grand Rapids. I am happy to be here with you, and I'm happy to enjoy in the cold weather as well. Last year, the U.S. Border Patrol reported more than 1.6 million encounters with migrants along the U.S.-Mexico border. And of these encounters, repeat border crossers accounted for a sizable proportion, 27%, or nearly 450,000, which resulted in overstating the grand total. However, my attention is not fixated on that numerical data, but on this particular phrase that described the data. It said, encounters refer to events. Encounters with migrants refer to events. Simply put, according to definitions for the word event, encounters with migrants along the southwest border are places where something of importance happened. If that's the case, then, how should our national consciousness interpret these 1.6 million encounters? I propose with a sonnet. In 1883, an American writer named Emma Lazarus embedded her radical imagination for hospitality and welcome into a poem called The New Colossus. At that time, Lazarus, writing amidst a national backdrop of economic depression, fueling anxiety, fear, and animosity towards those directed at, quote, taking away jobs from white men, end quote, and disrupting white racial purity. Have you heard that before? The year before, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first federal law excluding immigration from specific groups. Its intent was aimed at Chinese immigrants, disallowing them from working and living along the West Coast. The Supreme Court ruled on multiple occasions that expulsions and deportations could be determined by race, and if it was undesirable or for any other reason. I am not making this up. The overarching message from this was that where the case of immigrants is concerned, almost anything goes. And so it did, and so it does. And yet, like a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way, Lazarus penned a sonnet that was to be emblazoned on the pedestal on the Statue of Liberty. With a daring and prophetic voice, Lady Liberty invites America to re-examine and reimagine her definition for where and how something of importance happens. From 300 feet in the air, she asserts, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sunset sea-washed gates, shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. Her beaconed hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, your wretched refuse along your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Thank you, Dora. Friends, may we embody a vision of America that welcomes worldwide welcome 1.6 million times over. May we be a mother to the exiles seeking justice, mercy, and hope. And may we be compelled to light the doorstep to freedom along the U.S.-Mexico border and say with unequivocal certitude, something of importance happened here. Thank you.
So, as it says, that is Nick Brock. By the way, that's only the second time Nick has ever done that, and the first time he's ever done it by memory. So that's unbelievable. Because, you know, as we all know, you save your very best for the good people of McFarland UCC. That's when you bring your very best. So we're going to do that. One last trivia question, and then if you want to ask some questions, we'll take 2 minutes for some questions, and we'll let you go. Of all legal immigrants allowed into the United States, the total number of legal immigration that's granted, the visas that are offered for legal immigration, what percent can come from any one country? If that question is confusing to you, I understand why. It was to me too. I didn't know we had a limit on how many people can come from any one country. One of these answers is right. Is it 7% can come from any one country of the total amount? Is it 32% can come from any one country? 76%? Or am I making all this stuff? Is it actually no limit? And at this point, you know, any of these could be right? So what percent could come from any one country? Write your answer down on your sheet, because you get it all right over there at the table, you're going to walk home with a free t-shirt. You ready? And the answer is 7%. Of the roughly 635 immigration visas offered last year, that means that 47,000 can come from any one country. Mexico, Guatemala, 100, they can't have any more than that number. When people say, why don't they just come the right way? There is no right way for so many people. Currently, because of COVID and because of the laws passed by the Trump administration, asylum seekers were just totally cut off. That may be changed. That's changing. That's going to change at some point. Some of those people might be able to come in, but even asylum seekers have a cap. The cap was dropped down to 70,000 under the Trump administration. In 2019, do you know how many Guatemalans were granted asylum in the United States in the entire year? 7 people. 7 of them. So this idea, if they would just come the right way, that makes all the sense in the world. As we drove along the border and rode along the border and talked to Border Patrol, we kept looking at them and like, why don't you people do it the right way? We all want someone to do it the right way. I'll just tell you, the people not doing it the right way, it's not the migrants trying to come into this country. We can figure out a way. Or as the Christian tradition I come from, you make a way. And if any of us were trapped on the wrong side of a border and knew that our family was going to die unless we got on the other side, I don't think we would want to pay attention to a ridiculous quota system. So I like to remind my Republican friends, we've got to drop the quota system and stop with all this quota business and figure out how to get the right number of people in this country. And we can determine what that number is. Currently it's set at 635,000 visas overall. There are 320 million people in this country. 635,000 work visas that are offered. It's not going to steal our jobs, I'm quite certain. In fact, some of us have had a little trouble getting some service at a lot of the places, and we wouldn't mind a few more servers working at some of our places, right? So, a lot going on. All right, any questions? Oh, you already saw Tom Nelson. Any questions, anything like that, and then we'll let you come over to the table. I'll just tell you, you can sign up here to get on our email list if you're not on there. We'd love to stay in touch with you. The best way to do that is to write your name and email and phone number on that little white piece of paper and then just drop it off over there. If you did get all those answers right, we really will send you home with a t-shirt. If you got them all wrong, we'll still send you home with a t-shirt. The t-shirts aren't payoff. We just want you to feel like you're part of this thing, and sometimes wearing a matching shirt or a hat or having a bumper sticker or a pin or something else sort of makes you feel like you're part of it. So we'd love to have you do that, and then to share this story with anybody else that you think wants to hear about it. It'll take a while for the whole documentary to come out, but as I said, we'll start releasing little bits and pieces of it to start sharing around. If you give us your email address, we'll send you that. We'll send you the link from tonight. You can get that so you can share it with people real easily. So, but any comments, questions, anything like that? I know it's been 2 hours. Yes? Fundamentally, the President of the United States is head of the Border Patrol, and Border Patrol is under the Department of Homeland Security, so the current head of Homeland Security is the one they work with. What I didn't know, though, is that every one of the, and you can ask Dora and Alma to say more about this after we're done if you want, but every one of the areas along the way has a different Border Patrol, and those different Border Patrol areas have their own processes. It's sort of the Wild West out there, so you don't even get consistent work between Border Patrol. And like a lot of federal agencies, there's a lot of pressure about who's in charge. The person who made the decision, I told you the story about in Del Rio, Texas, where they asked the small nonprofits to take over the work that the Border Patrol was supposed to do, that person who made that decision and asked the people to do that in Del Rio is now the head of all Border Patrol federally. So I think he doesn't really care if nonprofits have to solve the problem. Their primary concern is to protect Border Patrol agents. So, any other questions, comments, anything like that? Yes, Dora. Yes, please.
Just real quick, while we were talking, I didn't want this to pass. Do you guys remember the tents all around the border? Well, that's due to the remaining Mexico order. If some of you know about that, it came up in the middle of the night in a tweet in January 2019. So what happened was, after John Sessions said, okay, zero tolerance is done, we're not gonna separate any more children, but 2019, January, it came out in the middle of the night that every asylum seeker, even if they had a credible interview and they were eligible to come to this country, they were going to be returned to Mexico. And whereas Mexico is the borderlands where organized crime is waiting for them. I just wanted to clarify that and help with that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's something. You come the right way, you come seeking asylum, then you're told to go wait in Mexico maybe for 3 or 5 years until your asylum claim is heard, because we didn't want to separate children any longer. And then the Biden administration reversed that, and then a court said you can't just reverse it, so now they're in a court battle to try to reverse it. Meanwhile, we were in multiple tent cities along. In Tijuana, it was 10,000 people. It was 3,000 people in Reynosa living there. They have nowhere to go, and they have to stay close because they might get an asylum claim and they have to cross the border. It makes no sense. It just makes no sense, and it's meant to not make any sense. So it makes you just feel like you're losing your minds. So before we can solve all those problems, people have to go there and kind of work to triage the situation. And that's where we find ourselves. The Biden administration is doing a few things. They're going to try to make some shifts. This Title 42 might go away in the next few days, next few weeks, but that could all then is going to create another crush upon the border that our federal government is not prepared for. The period of time you have to wait, we're in that case just talking about asylum seekers, not people looking for work, anything. People who are living in a situation where their lives are untenable, and by international law, they have the right to seek asylum. Now, our government can say, you don't qualify for asylum in the U.S. Give them the answer, and that's that. They're not giving them an answer. They're saying, wait, and we'll tell you later. So they're stuck, and these sweet moms are like, where am I going to go? You might also ask yourself, where do they get the money to pay for these coyotes? $3,000 per. Well, some of them don't have the money, so they're in debt. Then they get in the U.S., and then they have to work off the debt, and then they end up having their passports or their documentation taken from them, and then they're trafficked around and they work at farms. So all of that is a problem. And what does that all revert back to? Drug interdiction, right? That's what the cartels are doing. So now all of that's a part of the whole story, and it's complicated, extremely complicated. We could and would, if you wanted to, stay up all night talking to you about all this going on, but it's gotten late enough. So just want you to know there's a lot here and there's a lot there. Yes? Yeah, it is tough because there's so many pieces. Like very often, immigration in the United States deals with people who are already in the United States. You'll hear these two phrases. People will talk about moving current people living in the United States that don't have legal status out of what's called temporary permanent status. Okay, so they're here, but they don't have full legal documentation yet. Big movement to try to do that with people living in the country. The other is DACA. These are people that came deferred action on childhood arrivals. So DACA means that somebody came when they were a child, and all of that, a lot of energy around that. There's people working in the administration, you probably get emails about it, you hear about it. None of that has to do with anyone who's not in the country yet. You can change TPS, you can change DACA, we can fix all that, we can create a pathway to citizenship for people living in the US. That doesn't do anything about border practices. Part of the reason we talk about immigration and border practices is because the way we treat people at the border actually matters as well. So, this is not going to be a satisfactory answer, but it's a deep dive to figure this out. It's not a simple one. Dora, Alma are great on-the-ground resources. There's a number, any of the immigration groups that send you something, they all have resources. The Immigration Migrant Resource Center is another good one. You can look them up online. They have a lot. The Cato Institute, the thing I showed up there, has a lot of good information for you. You can go on our website, find a lot of this. There's a few bills that are out there. But I promise you, it will become dizzying. Immigration lawyers will tell you, I mean, all lawyers always say, well, it depends. But immigration lawyers really say it depends because it is so complicated. I think the number is 72 different visa categories for someone to come into the United States. The United States has the most complicated immigration system in the world. There might be good reasons for that. Don't know. It's just complicated. So it gets really hard. At the same time, I will say, in the midst of this, a lot of it is not about who's going to negotiate out the ins and outs of the policy. There's teams of people in Washington, D.C. that can and should do that. The issue is the larger story. What's the story of this country? And when you listen to certain people, you hear one story of immigration, danger and threat in our livelihood. And then you hear another. And sometimes, some of us who are much more open to immigrants tend to also talk in shorthand that's not very helpful, right? So we have to sort of know and understand and start to know how to talk about these issues. And, just making a little differentiation sometimes between a migrant and an asylum seeker and a refugee, that can sort of help. And sort of helping people to understand that migration is a normal, natural process that people do. Like, you've heard some people say, tonight, hey, I migrated from Pennsylvania to Arkansas. Well, that's true. That's what we do. Let's just start talking about migration like it's a normal thing. Like, yeah, people move and they do things and they come and they go and they take up home. So we can start to normalize it. Or how many of us have immigrants as our grandparents and so on. I don't think it's particularly helpful to only talk about our immigration system as charity. We need to help these people. I think we need to talk about immigration as an American value. It's who we are, we the people, Statue of Liberty. Like, this is just what we do. We're not being heroic. It's what we do in America. I mean, look at all these stories, right? And start to advocate that. So I think a lot of it isn't even getting so. Well, it depends on your temperament and personality and all that stuff too. But how much you really want to know and drill down. Okay, so that's a lot. That's a long and short answer to a very unsatisfying long and short response to a great question. Is that enough? Have we had enough yet? Because we got to go to Minneapolis and do this again tomorrow, and you all got things to do at home. So thank you. Thanks for being with us.